Hi friends, my name is Zoranne and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about 23 fantasy books I want to read before the end of 2023. And you're probably thinking, Zoranne, in your last video, didn't you say that your next video was going to be the best books you read in 2022? And that would be correct, but a fun fact about me is I'm a liar, and I thought I've already made like 4 TikTok videos about my favorite books of 2022, so I thought making that video would be a little redundant. I don't know, maybe that's just me. So I won't be making that video, but if you do want to see what my favorite reads of 2022 were, you can go and watch those on my TikTok. Anyways, I thought it would be fun to make a video about books I haven't really talked about much yet, which is why we're doing 23 books I am excited to read in 2023, and all of them are fantasy except for one. I would like to apologize ahead of time for Ray in the background. She is a little attached to me, and wherever I go, she goes, so she'll be here. Ray, say hi. She's not interested. Okay, but if you hear her, don't mind her. She's lucky she's cute. The first book I'm talking about today, and it's one that has been recommended to me 1,000,001 times, and I am so ashamed that I have not read it yet, and it is Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. Assassin's Apprentice is one of those books that I know I will love deep into my bones, and it's one I'm scared to read. Not because I know I'll love it, but because like I know it's going to wreck me emotionally, and I feel like I keep putting it off because I'm ashamed to say that I haven't read it yet, and everyone recommends it to me. I'm always like, Zoranne, you gotta get into Hobb, you gotta get into Hobb, and I'm like, I know, and I bought the pretty UK covers, like I'm ready, I just don't know why I keep putting it off. I think another reason why I might be intimidated to get into this series is because I know the realm of the Elderlings, which is the universe that Robin Hobb created, is like a 16-book thing, and I don't know if I'm ready to get into that, because similar to Wheel of Time, it's like a 14-book series, which I've only read 2 of, and I'm just like, oh my god, I'm not even close to being done. And I'm just terrible at finishing series in general, but I know that once I start this, it will have a chokehold on me and I won't want to stop. And this series is one of those books that I told myself I was going to read last year. I didn't, so yay me. Another book I am just as ashamed to say that I have not read as much as Assassin's Apprentice is The City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. I'm embarrassed at this point, because every time I show The City of Brass on my TikTok channel, I get so many people in my comments saying, like, what the hell, Zoranne? What's wrong with you? Why haven't you read the David trilogy yet? And all I can say is I don't know. Like, I literally don't know, because it's another series I know I would love. I'm the type of book whore where you can't see them in the background, but I literally bought the UK hardback editions of the David trilogy because they were so pretty and they're out of print, and I was like, you know what? I think I need those. I paid a little too much for them, which I will not disclose the price because I'm embarrassed, because I haven't read them yet, and I have 2 sets of these books because I'm a whore! And I said in my TikTok video earlier this week that if I don't read The City of Brass this year, I'm deleting my account. Either I'll get to this series or it was nice knowing you. We'll just have to find out at the end of the year. Every one of my friends that I've talked to absolutely loves this series. It's another one that's at the top of the TBR for me. For the 3rd book on my TBR, there is a funny or not so funny story behind it, and it is because it is probably one of my most commonly asked questions is, Zoranne, have you read Malazan yet? And my answer is always like, no, but with a heart after it. I don't know what it is about this series by Steven Erikson, but I have been recommended it so many times in my comment section on TikTok, it almost made me hate it without even knowing anything about the book. It's just like every time I turned around, I felt like I was getting 50 comments about like, oh my god, have you read Malazan? Or if Malazan isn't on this list of like fantasy recommendations, I don't trust you. And I'm just like, I can't recommend anything I haven't read yet, and the more I get like yelled at to read Malazan, the more I don't want to read it. So every time someone's like, you need to read Malazan, it just has the opposite effect on me. But you know what? I went out and I bought it. I got the first book, Gardens of the Moon. Everyone says that it is a really expansive world with very complex politics and a massive character list, and it's just like hard to read, which doesn't exactly excite me in any way, but you know what? I am putting my trust in the people here, mostly because I'm scared and I feel like if I don't read it, I'll let someone down. I don't have much hope in myself It's not that I don't have hope in the book. I do. I'm sure it's good. This is one book I'm like genuinely scared of, and I'm not scared of books, okay? Like, but there's just something about this series where the fandom is like really ride or die, which like I love that for you guys, but like as someone who's on the outside looking in, it's a smidge intimidating. I had a friend of mine even send me a link to a Google Doc where it's a chapter by chapter breakdown, so she knew what was going on as she was reading the book. And if that doesn't tell you everything you know about the Malazan series, I don't know what does. The fourth book on this list is The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon, and this is one I'm probably not going to read until the summertime because I heard that Samantha Shannon is actually revising this book for the 10th anniversary of the publication for The Bone Season. And so a revised edition of this will be out this summer sometime. And it's been kind of cool to watch her on her stories and Instagram talk about this, how this is something she's wanted to do for a while with this book because she knows over the course of 10 years, her writing has evolved a lot. So for the special edition of the 10th anniversary, she wanted to revise her debut novel. Samantha did say in her stories that the structure of The Bone Season, a lot of it did remain the same, but she wanted to flesh out a lot more aspects of the world and the characters because she thought that she could do a better job of it and she could just make the story a lot stronger, especially as she continues the rest of the series, since there is 4 books out right now and I think it's projected to be a 7-book series. But I am excited to read the Bone Season series for the first time because The Priory of the Orange Tree is a book that I really love. I'm rereading The Priory of the Orange Tree right now actually in preparation for the release of A Day of Fallen Night in February. So yeah, that's why The Bone Season makes it to this list. The next book is a little bit of a chonker, which I don't mind. The longer the book, the better in my opinion, and it is The Shadow of What Was Lost by James Islington, book 1 in the Licanius trilogy. To be quite honest, I don't know anything about these books. I know I have friends that have read and loved them. I've heard that if you are a fan of The Wheel of Time, then you'll be a fan of this series. I've only read the first 2 Wheel of Time books, and I started the third, but just never finished it. Don't yell at me. And I watched the first season of the TV show, which, like, we don't need to talk about. We all agree it was, like, meh, right? I've just heard that this is a series with complex world building and complex characters, which is something I absolutely love. Back in 2021, Legendborn was one of my favorite books of the year, and it's one of my favorite YA series of all time. And so, of course, naturally, Bloodmarked, the sequel, has landed on this list. And this is one I need to read sooner rather than later because I am so scared I'm going to see a spoiler online. I just know I will be lurking on Twitter one day and I will just come across a spoiler that I didn't mean to see. In almost every review I've read or video I've seen about Bloodmarked, people have been calling it one of the best books they've ever read, their favorite book of the year. It solidifies Bree as one of their favorite heroines of all time. And that just makes me so excited because when I read Legendborn back in 2021, me and Bree I knew we were gonna be besties even before I finished the book. One of the reasons that I loved Legendborn so much was it was one of the first books where I thought grief was written realistically, especially since Bree is someone who has recently lost her mother and as someone who has also lost their mom when they were young. I just related to Bree so much. As soon as I read the words about her being in the Dead Moms Club, I was like, you know what, Bree, you and I are besties now. I'm not going anywhere. The next book I am super excited to read is The Vanished Birds by Simon Jimenez. The Spear Cuts Through Water is one of my favorite books I have ever read, and it was my favorite book I read in 2022, so I obviously had to pick up a copy of The Vanished Birds. This was recommended to me by Moss Illustra online. Their recommendations are immaculate, and I was lucky enough to be gifted a copy of this or Secret Santa this year when I participated in an exchange. So I have nothing but high expectations for Simon Jimenez. He has solidified himself as an auto-buy author for me. And I know this is his debut novel, and I know it's a bit different from Spear because this is a sci-fi that I believe has to do with time travel. Honestly, I haven't looked too much at the synopsis because this is a book I think I should go in knowing less information because that's kind of like how Spear was set up, because the less you know about going into The Spear Cuts Through Water, the better. That's kind of how I'm hoping The Vanished Birds is for me. Next book I want to read is book 1 of the Temeraire series, being His Majesty's Dragon by Naomi Novik. I haven't read anything by Naomi Novik yet. I'm sure I would love her books, but this one particularly caught my eye when I saw a video from author H.M. Long, who finished the series, and she loved it. And this shit is 9 books long. But all I needed to know that it was set during the Napoleonic Wars. There's a boy and a dragon. They form a bond and they must go to battle together. Who doesn't want to read about that? Are you kidding me? Anything with dragons, honestly, is a no-brainer. I have to buy it. I have to read it. It's not my fault. Bitches love dragons and I just happen to be bitches. So I know this is a longer series. It's 9 books long, for crying out loud. Who has time for that? Not me, but maybe I will someday. But it won't hurt to like get the party started, you know? It's not very long. So yeah, dragons, bonds, politics, battle, you name it, I'm in. I'm excited. If you don't know, I run an online Discord server called Fantasy and Friends, which is the same name as my book club. It's a community space where you can just hang out with friends, talk about books all the time. And one of my Discord mods, LJ, he is always raving about The Traitor Beru Cormorant by Seth Dickinson. He knows that I love books that feature murderous women, and he was like, Zoranne, you're gonna love Beru. You have to read this series. I'm reading it right now and I love it, and I'm your mod, so you have to read it too, because you're a sucker for a murderous woman. And I was like, you know what? I am a sucker for a murderous woman. I can't help it. I like it when they stab. I like it. Not gonna lie, this cover like kind of freaks me out a little bit. I don't know if this is like a real person or like a mask. I guess I'll have to RFAO, aka read and find out. Also, Peruse Project, Reagan, she's been reading this series over the course of a while for now. I love her channel and I trust her recommendations. She is also reading this series, and I believe one of the books in this series made her top books of 2022 list. That means it's gotta be good, right? At the start of 2022, I had COVID, and during that week where I felt like shit, I read the first 2 Murderbot novellas, and so naturally, I loved them because who doesn't love Murderbot, and I want to continue on with this series, and so I would love to read Network Effect and some of the other books in the Murderbot diaries this year. They're very quick novellas, which is something I love. Murderbot is hilarious. He hates his humans. He loves to watch soap operas. I like to watch TV, and I hate humans sometimes, so like Murderbot and I naturally get along. And honestly, just reading like fantasy and sci-fi novellas is a truly underrated experience. It's a whole story in 150 pages or less. Honestly, sometimes they make me more emotional than regular books, and I'm just always left wanting more. Murderbot is just one of those series that is just a ton of fun, and I can't wait to continue. Some of my favorite fantasy books tend to be on the more grimdark side, such as like the 5th season and the Poppy War, so naturally I have to read a book by Lord Grimdark himself, so I want to get into the first Law trilogy, the first book being The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. I've heard this is a very character-driven series, and the audiobooks narrated by Stephen Pacey are just nothing like anyone's ever listened before, and they're just some of the best audiobooks, which makes me so excited because I primarily read via audiobook. An author I feel like I've been following online forever is Ryan Cahill, and he is the author of the Bound and the Broken series, so I would love to jump in with Of Blood and Fire sometime this year, because The Broken Binding, which is a bookstore in the UK, is doing their own exclusive edition of the book, which is like signed and numbered, and it has gold foiled pages and a sewn binding, and it's just absolutely gorgeous with illustrations, and like, I'm getting carried away. But anyways, what I'm just saying, I ordered it without even reading the first book, because like I said, I'm a whore for pretty books. I've heard the series is nothing but amazing. The 3rd book of War and Ruin comes out, I want to say sometime next week on January 19th, I think. I've heard if you're a fan of John Gwynne, then you will love Ryan Cahill's books, which is perfect because I'm a John Gwynne girly, if you didn't know. If you're not new here, you would know that 2022 was the year of the Viking for me, and I call it me being in my Viking era because I read The Shadow of the Gods and The Hunger of the Gods, which is a Norse-inspired epic fantasy series, and I wanted to keep chasing that feeling, so then I went and watched The Last Kingdom on Netflix, and then when I was done with that, I still wanted more, so then I went and watched all 6 seasons of Vikings on Amazon Prime, and I recently finished that, and I was like, oh fuck, I need more, like, I just love this Viking, I just love it so much. So then I watched the 1st season of Vikings Valhalla, which now the 2nd season just came out, so you know what I'll be doing next week. I'll be sailing to Kattegat again. I want to continue reading Norse-inspired fantasy stories because they just tend to be like the best thing ever. They're just so epic and grand in scale. And so I would love to read The Standalone by H.M. Long, being Hall of Smoke. She's an author that I chat with online frequently, and she's just so fun to talk to. I love her recommendations. So of course, you know, I gotta give her book a shot because I know it's gonna be great. This is her debut. It's a standalone fantasy, and she writes, all of her books have been standalone so far, but they've been set in the same universe. So that's really cool. You can really jump in anywhere. I know Hall of Smoke is is about a warrior priestess and deceitful gods, which to me, that's all I need to know before diving in. I don't need much. I need epic battles and I need murderous women. Case closed. It feels like my Viking TBR keeps growing, so I feel like I have to read The Children of Gods and Fighting Men by Shauna Lawless. This book has been recommended to me over and over again by a lot of booktubers that I love and respect, one of them being Library of a Viking and the Brothers Gwyn. Also, my friend Jenna from Jenna's Lit Picks has this book, and she's like, Zoranne, I feel like you would like this. And I was like, Jenna, I feel like you know me so well. So you know what? I got it. And the best part about this, it came in the December Caffeine and Legends box. So it was honestly just a nice surprise to open the box, get this book and some coffee. And not to do like a little shameless plug, but if you're interested in a business that pairs a new fantasy book each month with either coffee or tea and hot chocolate, I really recommend Caffeine and Legends. This is obviously not sponsored, but they trusted me with a rep code. I don't know why. So if you want to save money on your first box, you can use code Zoranne10. This is another series I'm excited to read. I believe the sequel is coming out sometime this year. I know when I read this, I'm gonna love it. But I believe The Children of Gods and Fighting Men is gonna be a little bit different from other Norse-inspired stories I've consumed, because this one is actually set in Ireland, Dublin specifically. And the other ones other stories I've consumed have been set in like more of a Norse setting, like Norway or Sweden, or even just like a fantastic world, or even England and like Denmark. So this is one I'm super excited about. I feel like a fake Brandon Sanderson fan when I say that I have not read Era 2 of Mistborn yet. So it is on my priority list to not only reread Era 1 of Mistborn, but to start Era 2 this year, because 2024, I want to do a full Stormlight reread in preparation of Stormlight 5 coming out, and I feel like I just need to go all across the Cosmere. A lot of my friends have read Era 2 Mistborn, and they say it's not as good as Era 1, but I don't feel like it's fair to compare the two when they are completely separate from one another. I know this is more like a Western style. It's more comedy. The characters are a lot more fun. Brandon Sanderson is honestly my favorite author. He never fails to disappoint me. He's got his secret projects this year, which I hope to be reading Trust in the Emerald Sea very soon so I can review it for you, because I think that would be a lot of fun. Nevertheless, The Alloy of Law and Era 2 of Mistborn is something I'm excited to jump into. So if you are in the Fantasy and Friends book club online, you might notice that this book will be on the February poll. I guess I'm revealing that soon. But The Bone Shard Daughter is another series I've been recommended to start over and over again, and I heard it's got like bone magic, animal companions, which is one of my favorite things, and the trilogy is being completed this spring with the Bone Shard War, so I feel like I have to jump into this. I've also heard it's sapphic, and I think this would be a great book club pick, to be honest. Not that I'm pressuring you to vote for this for the book club pick, but it's just another epic fantasy series that gets a lot of hype, and I know a lot of people have enjoyed, and it's one that just keeps getting better as time goes on. It's got a lot of praise from authors that I love, so this is one I am excited to dive into. Mostly for the animal companions, because I've heard Miffy is just like the best. So the other night I reached 100,000 followers on TikTok. Yay! And to celebrate, I did a live stream for a few hours, and in my comments over and over again, I felt like I was getting bullied into reading The Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter. This is another book I think would be a great book club pick, but nevertheless, it made this list because I was getting berated in the comments by 2 accounts in particular. And if you're watching this, you know who you are. But this is another series that has just like epic battles, dragons, what more do you need? I believe this is going to be a quartet. There's only 2 books out right now. It's something I'm super excited about. Some people say it's like their favorite series ever, one of the best books they've ever read. It's gotten so much praise. I know this used to be self-published, and now it's traditionally published by Orbit. And I feel like Evan Winter is one to watch, you know? So yeah, anyways, this is on this list because I've been bullied. And I know some of my friends and followers are like engaged enough in my content that they will come back and they will DM me and comment on my videos and ask me if I've read this, and I have to have an answer for them, you know? The next book on this list is one I do not have a physical copy of, and it is Kaikei by Vaishnavi Patel. This is a Indian Hindu mythology inspired fantasy story about a woman named Kaikei. This has been recommended to me because I love the Song of Achilles, and I know people who love Circe also love this book, and it's one I'm excited to dive into. I don't know much about the plot. The person who recommended me this book, I trust him, so you know it has to be good, right? right. I love a good fantasy novella, and I've never read anything by the author T. Kingfisher, so I was recommended to read Nettle and Bone by them this year, and I've heard that this is on the cozy side of fantasy, even though the cover does not look it. But I love novellas, and often I finish them hoping that they were a full-length novel. But you know what? I think this will be a good introduction to their work. I know they've got a few other books that I'm interested in reading, such as like I think it's called The House with Good Bones that's coming out soon, A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking, but Nettle and Bone sounds right up my alley. I don't know how cozy it's gonna be. I know the main character is tasked with helping her sister, and she goes to a witch, and she's given a tool to like to kill the prince. It sounds good, you know? I don't know what's going on in the House of Commons, but right now I feel like I cannot escape Daughter of No Worlds by Carissa Broadbent on my For You page. Swear to God, it feels like everyone and their mother is reading it right now, and everyone is giving it rave reviews. They're saying it's the only series that has come close to curing their Throne of Glass hangover. I don't know about you, but that is high praise. Throne of Glass isn't my favorite series by far, but like anything that like as addicting as Throne of Glass, like I'm interested in, because there was crack in those pages. So you know what? I started reading it this week. It's on Kindle Unlimited, and my friends Erin and Deirdre, they're like, are we all reading this at the same time? And we're like, yeah, we are. So we're talking about it as we read right now. Not gonna lie, guys, it is really good. So good, I accidentally let my finger slip on Amazon and I hit add to cart, and the next thing I knew, I hit purchase, and the next thing it's gonna be here on Monday. You know how it goes. It's just like, It feels like there's a slow burn romance creeping up right now, and I'm excited to see where the rest of this series goes, because I'm not even that far into it, and my friends are farther than I am. They're like, oh my God, shit is hitting the fan, and I was like, oh my God, I'm not there yet. But I will be reporting back. I'll probably be making TikToks on this because that's where it's popular right now. Nevertheless, I'm excited to keep reading. I don't know about y'all, but I am a Six of Crows girly at heart, so I was recommended to read The Gilded Wolves by Roshni Chokshi. I know this is a YA fantasy series. It's a completed trilogy for fans of Six of Crows. There's found family, there's heist, there's politics. It seems like a lot of fun. The cover is gorgeous, by the way. I really don't know much about it, but I am intrigued by the synopsis. I'm excited to dive in, because I do tend to be a little picky about my YA fantasy these days. Not because I'm like old, I'm only 24, but because it seems like there's a big scope of like YA fantasy. Like some of it feels like it's written for like the younger side of YA, like the 13 to 14 year olds, and then there's another side of YA that's written for people who are like 16 to 19 and above, and I'm in that like above category, and I don't want to read something that feels like it's written too young. I know a lot of people love The Gilded Wolves. I'm excited to give it a shot. I love Six of Crows, so I have no doubt that I'm gonna be obsessed with this. You're in the home stretch, and book 22 is an oldie, but I've heard it's a goodie, and it is Fennekin of the Rock by Melina Marchetta. Recommended this by an Instagram friend of mine named Shanna, and she loves this series. I don't ever see anyone talking about it, but I remember Peru's Project talking about it years ago. And you know what? I trust Shanna. I trust her opinion. I don't know what this book is about. I love the title though. I know it's like an older YA series. Book 23 is not a fantasy novel, but it's one I think is important to read, and which is why it's on this list, because last year I started getting into reading memoirs. I never read nonfiction really before. It's something that I surprisingly liked when I read a few memoirs last year. So naturally, I have to add Know My Name by Chanel Miller to this list. So I am really looking forward to reading her story, probably an audiobook, because I think that's the best way to consume memoirs, because they're usually narrated by the author, and so you're getting the story the exact way it was meant to be told. I've heard it can be pretty dark, and I don't know if triggering at some points, but it's something I'm excited to dive into, because memoirs tend to be like a really cathartic reading experience for me. All right, that is all 23 books I want to read in 2023. Let me know down below what you think of this list, either if they're on your TBR or if you've already read them. This was a fun thing to make, and I'm looking forward to coming back to this list a year from now to see how I did, because I failed at my fantasy TBR for 2022. I'm looking forward to taking it easy this year, honestly. I did not set a numerical reading goal. I read over 100 books last year, and I didn't want to stress myself out with trying to meet or beat that goal, so I set my Goodreads goal to read only one book this year, and so far I am 200% complete. Go me! That being said, the Fantasy and Friends book club right now is reading A Broken Blade by Melissa Blair, but the February poll will be going out soon, and if that's a community you want to join, I highly recommend it. Not that I'm biased or anything, but it's just a super fun place where we can be book nerds and hang out and talk about fantasy books. The link to join those clubs and spaces is below, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.